and your life.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new episode of Moonbeam Community Voice. My name is Lina, and I'm a governance researcher at Moonbeam Foundation. I'll be your host for today, and if I do poorly, let's all blame Kathy, your usual amazing host, because she's the one who made me do this. And this is the first time, so I am a bit nervous. Today, we have a panel discussion about OpenGov and Polkadot and Moonbeam. As you probably know, Moonriver Council proposed to upgrade the runtime upgrade to version 2100, which introduces OpenGov to Moonriver. And it actually opens new ways for the chain to be managed. And since it is a major change, we put together a panel which can explain in simple terms what OpenGov is and why the community should care about this. And our panelists for today are Raul from Parity, Yann from PureStake, and Thiago from Moonbeam Ambassador Community. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. And before we start, let's go through the structure of today's discussion really quickly. I have a couple of questions for each of you, and we can go in rounds. We'll actually start with Raul. Then there is one question I'd like each of you to answer, and then we have like about 10 to 15 minutes for the community questions. So if you are all ready, let's get started. So Raul, the first question is for you. For people who are new to Polkadot and new to governance in general, can you explain what is OpenGov in very simple terms? And what are the main differences from Gov v1?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. As Lina said, my name is Raul. I'm a council member on Polkadot, and I used to be a council member on Kusama. I'm really excited to hear that Moonriver is going to experiment with the OpenGov model as well. As you might know, parachain communities decide to experiment with whichever model in governance they wish to. They don't need to have the relay chain governance in the same way as it is structured on the relay chain. This is a very big question, right? So in simple terms, we need to go back a bit on what the discussion is in terms of thinking and how the discussion was structured from a few years ago. We know that the governance discussion on blockchain has been around for a few years now. We have the discussions on should we use on-chain governance or should we use off-chain governance? This is a question that comes up in all networks eventually. On Polkadot and Kusama, the community decided to move to an on-chain governance model, right? And the reason why we decided, or what I think the community decided to go in this way, is because on-chain governance allows us basically to define what the rules are by which the system will operate. And if we want to change those rules, we need a process in place that can execute the decision of the community in an automatic way. And when I say in an automatic way, I mean not conditioned by particular parts or particular stakeholders of the network, but executing this automatically if approved and taking all of the token holders who voted in favor of this proposal as accountable for this particular proposition or submission. So Polkadot basically provides, right, the structure for users to form collective groups. And these collective groups are the ones that form the structure that we know as on-chain governance on Polkadot and Kusama. Now, the structure on Polkadot and Kusama is different, right? On Kusama, we have open governance model, and in Kusama, we have governance one model for now. But the governance mechanism is the one that allows the network to evolve gracefully. If we want to think about a network to be used over time in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, we need to be able to have a way to upgrade and develop things that the users need and want to use over time. And we cannot have a final iteration of a network and expect this technology stack to be used by users in 10, 20, 30 years. We need a way to evolve and a way to adapt the network to the user's needs. And that's what the Polkadot and the Kusama on-chain governance models give us. So that's in simple terms what on-chain governance provides as a service to the community. It provides a mechanism for the users to be able to decide what are the changes that they want to see on the network for the network to adapt to their needs, right? Now, there are two models that we are using today. As I said, on Kusama, we're using OpenGov, but on Polkadot, we're still using Governance 1. I also said that Polkadot, or more specifically, the Substrate framework, allows developers to create collectives and for users and token holders to associate in collectives that have specific privileges that can change the network. On Governance 1, we had what we called a tricameral design, so to say, very loosely inspired on Western parliamentary democracies. We had a democracy module that was composed by all the token holders. We had a council and we had a technical committee. Okay, now these three collectives used to work and still work on Polkadot in coordination in order to execute proposals according to token holder needs and desires. The council basically has the role of initiating proposals, of initiating legislation. However, the role of the council is pretty limited with respects to what it can do. In general, you need the ultimate decision of token holders in democracy module, the third collective, in order to be able to execute a proposal successfully, right? That said, Governance 1 on Kusama worked really well the first 2 or 3 years since Genesis on Kusama because it allowed the community to provide a fast response for the resolution of issues, emergency upgrades, a change of parameters that were not working in a fast environment, and so on. But when we started seeing that the network was becoming much more stable over time, there were not so many emergency upgrades, there were not issues to be solved right away, the community started demanding much more participation on the governance side of things. And it is particularly interesting because although the tricameral design of Governance 1 works in a way as a representation model, right? Like the council is selected by token holders, and so the token holder represents passive stakeholders, but you can only initiate referenda. This kind of like loosely define what we call first class and second class citizens. And so the aim of OpenGov is to break with this particular type of design in order to lower the barriers of participation, to lower the barriers of discussion, and also lower the barriers of submission. What really does not change is it does not break from the original tenet or the original principle of Polkadot governance, which is that 50% of the total stake in the system should, if they have enough strength of conviction, be able to design what's the direction of the network. So this tenet still exists in open governance. And similarly, it doesn't move away from conviction voting, which is something that we've used on governance 1. However, it allows much more freedom and flexibility for proposers and token holders to vote and discuss proposals in different ways, right? The open governance model, different to governance 1, deletes the console, so dissolves the console. The console does not exist anymore. It doesn't have a function, and dissolves the technical committee and replaces it for kind of like a disciple of the technical committee that is called the technical fellowship. But in the same way as the technical committee, the fellowship cannot propose legislation. They cannot submit legislation to change the network and don't have the power to do so. And different to the technical committee, the composition, the nature, and the question that the fellowship answers is totally different from the one the technical committee used to answer, right? The fellowship answered to the question, is this proposal bringing value to the network? Yes or no? And by replying yes, they whitelist the hash of the proposal, allowing the proposal to be approved with lower thresholds or approval and support. But it doesn't change the voting period time on this. So this is a really, really important difference between fellowship and technical committee. Another difference between governance one and open governance model is that if you remember, or you see it on Polkadot, the model right now on Polkadot allows only one proposal vote per period. And a period on Polkadot is 28 days, which is a really long time. On Kusama, this is 7 days, right? We know that Kusama is 4 times faster than Polkadot. And so this means that on Kusama, when we had Gov1, a proposal would be voted 7 days and then 7 days enactment and then being executed successfully. However, 14 days is still a long time on Kusama as well. So there was some certain limitations regarding the amount of proposals that could be decided by the community in one particular period, right? If the TC was not intervening, then it was one proposal per period. With open governance, the token holders can actually vote on different proposals at the same time and execute different proposals successfully at the same time in different tracks. Each of these tracks will have the privilege to execute particular calls on the network. And depending if these calls are more powerful, so to say, or less powerful, then the thresholds of approval and support will be higher or lower in the different tracks. For example, it will not be the same to vote and pass a proposal on root with root track, with root origin that would allow us to upgrade the runtime, for example, than to pass a proposal for a tip for Kusama, right? Obviously, the tip proposal is much easier to pass and has lower thresholds of approval and support than a runtime upgrade on root track. And then OpenGov provides a more agile model for delegation. We had delegation already in governance one, and this allowed token holders that couldn't or did not want to participate actively on a daily basis on governance to be able to delegate their tokens without their tokens leaving their accounts to delegates, so to say, that would vote for them in proposals. Open governance model has the same type of delegation, but much more agile in the sense that a token holder can decide specific tracks in which they want to delegate this power and keep certain tracks for themselves if they want to participate in particular tracks, okay? But all in all, on-chain governance on Polkadot and Kusama allows us to evolve and adapt the network to the user needs and allows us to define the rules by which these particular communities govern the network themselves. And it allows the community to propose changes to the network, not only in runtime upgrades, but also parameters, change of configurations, and also to spend the treasury, which is a very important tool for the community, particularly to fund public infrastructure.
Oops, sorry. Okay, I am unmuted. Well, this was a very elaborate answer, Raul. Thank you so much. And from what you said, we can actually see that it was a very natural evolution in both Kusama and Polkadot community, going from GovV1 to OpenGov. And I really liked how you explained that it was actually the community who demanded more participation rights. Yes, this is very much theoretical, but can you give us an example? How would it be in practice? What is actually OpenGov in practice for a person who does not really understand all this theoretical terminology?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you 2 examples that are very different on how the dynamics work between the 2 collectives that exist on OpenGov, right? The first example I would like to give is a treasury proposal. The proposals that we see the most on Kusama at the moment are treasury proposals. We have a lot of other type of proposals that we don't call treasury, but governance proposals. These are related to change of parameters or staking configuration or things like that. But for a treasury proposal right now on OpenGov, the process is quite similar with regards to the proposal draft and preparation. Proposers and submitters still need to present their idea to the community, so the governance forums are very much in place and being used. But the difference is that the proposer doesn't need to submit it as a treasury proposal for then Council to pass it as a motion to be voted in Council collective. The proposer can directly submit this to the network in the track in which the treasury proposal is supposed to go. Let's say if you request funding for 1,000 Kusama, then you have to go to one track. If you request funding for 5,000 Kusama, you go to another track. And these have different thresholds for approval or support. The higher the amount you request, the higher support and approval you need in order for your proposal to pass, obviously, right? So what happens is the team that wants to propose something to Treasury, they go directly to the track, they submit their proposal, and they pay a submission deposit. The submission deposit is relatively low, is super cheap compared to Governance One. And the reason why the submission deposit is cheap is because this particular submission process needs to be open to anyone, small and big token holders, right? Then this proposal enters into a preparation phase. And this preparation phase is when the community is able to review, discuss, make comments, and so on. And after preparation phase, the proposer needs to pay what we call a decision deposit, which is a second type of deposit. And this is a bit higher. And this particular deposit, which is defined on the amounts by the different tracks, the more important or the more powerful the track, then the higher the decision deposit will be, works as an anti-spam mechanism. And once the proposer pays this decision deposit, then the proposal will pass to what we call a decision phase. And this is when token holders vote for yes or for no on the proposal. A proposal on Kusama will be voted for 14 days. It doesn't mean that it will be voted for the entire period, for the entire 14 days. If a proposal reaches the thresholds of approval and support before the 14 days, then it will go to a confirmation period. And if this proposal stays in the confirmation period with the minimum thresholds of approval and support desired for the track, then it is when it is approved and the allocation is paid for the team to start. So this is pretty, I mean, it looks like a lot of steps, but this particular process is automatic, right? You just need to make sure that your proposal is being discussed and being voted by the community for yes or for no. And you need to work with the community and lobby with the community in order to get the minimum approval threshold and the minimum support threshold. This would be in the case of a treasury proposal. In the case of a runtime upgrade, for example, it is a bit more complex. For the only reason that if we would submit a runtime upgrade on root track, then it would be exactly the same process as a treasury proposal. You pay a submission deposit, then the decision deposit, then the community approves, confirmation period, enactment, and it's done. But because root track is really hard to pass because it has really high approval thresholds and support thresholds, in general for runtime upgrade, we use what we call whitelisted color track, sorry. The whitelisted color track is a particular track that needs the coordination of two collectives in OpenGov in order to be able to pass a proposal. So let's say I go and I propose a runtime upgrade to the network on Kusama. And at the same time, simultaneously, because this is in whitelist color track, then the fellowship, which is the one in charge of whitelisting proposal hashes, will vote on a second proposal to whitelist my hash. If the fellowship approves this, then my proposal will be enacted successfully if the community has approved it and accepted it. So as you can see, it depends on the process depends only on the tracks, right? In general, it is very straightforward. You submit it, you pay the decision and the submission deposit, and the proposal goes up for vote. But in the case of whitelisted color track, which is a second example I wanted to give because it's a bit more complex, you need the coordination of these two collectives in order to enact this particular proposal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. It sounds quite complicated, but I think we are not surprised, as it's always the case if you want to be understood and governed by the majority of the community, right? Before we go to our next speaker, I really quickly wanted to ask you one simple question. So it has been over a month since OpenGov has been launched and deployed to Kusama, right? Can you give us some insights, like in 3 sentences, what's going on there now?
Yeah, so I mean, in my opinion, it's running quite smoothly. The first 2 to 3 weeks were quite messy, were quite chaotic, but you know, it's Kusama, so you have to expect chaos. The first 2 to 3 weeks, what we did with the community was make sure to adjust the parameters, to adjust approval and support threshold, adjust the submission and decision deposits that were quite high at the beginning in order for the community to be able to participate, submit proposals and whatnot. We have changed some calls that were in specific tracks to be in other tracks that are easier for the community to discuss, to submit, and to pass. And we are talking about the possibility of new tracks, particularly for bounty mechanism, which is something that we're missing a more practical and fast process to vote. But all in all, after the 2 to 3 weeks of chaos that we had at the beginning, the community is slowly getting used to the OpenGov. We're seeing a lot of new proposals, a lot of treasury proposals. The validators on Kusama have just submitted today a proposal to increase the minimum commission on the network using staking admin track. And so everyone is getting used to the fact that you can propose and vote on different proposals at the same time. We've seen much more participation in the direction channels and in the governance forums. So all in all, it's been quite a positive experience for OpenGov and Kusama.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Raul, for the answers, very elaborate ones. Before we go to Yann from PureStake, I'd like to mention that you can ask your questions in the chat box, or there is a small button that says ask a question, and you can actually, hopefully we'll have some time in the end. Yann, hi. Yann, if you can shortly introduce yourself and take the first question. Tell us, please, about OpenGov integration that will be actually voted on Moonriver started. It will start being voted on Moonriver later today, and I know that you have been working on it today, putting a proposal on Polkadot Assembly. Can you please tell us when it's going to start, when it's going to end, and when it's actually coming to Moonbeam?
Sure, and thank you, Lina. So I'm Yann, product lead at PureStake. So I worked a lot on the user-facing app, but also on the core protocol to make sure that we deliver new features on Moonbeam network. So yes, about OpenGov. So this is something that is quite exciting, a way to improve the governance process. And yeah, we just submitted this proposal on Moonriver. So it's live and it will be deployed along with the runtime 2100. So if you go to the community forum, you will be able to see more details and also be able to start voting on it. If everything goes well, basically the OpenGov will be deployed to Moonriver by the 2nd of February. And in December 2023, we also published a post on the same community forum to explain the new process of OpenGov and the different configurations, the different tracks we plan to use for governance. So I will also recommend you to add to this community forum to learn a bit more on the specificities of OpenGov in Moonriver. Raul mentioned about how OpenGov is working, and I really feel that the difference between OpenGov and GovV1 is something that was pretty much needed to facilitate the adoption of a governance process. Because if you see that OpenGov is an improvement of this process, basically you have to understand that on GovV1, it was like going to a city shop trying to pay something. So you have to wait in one queue because there is only one cashier there. So you have to wait for a bit of time. Whatever you have a lot of articles, only a small amount of articles. If you're a disabled shopper, if you're a pregnant woman, whatever, you have to wait. And everyone was treating the same way. And with OpenGov, basically you are going to a big city supermarket where there is different lines, different queues, different cashiers. And some lines can also be customized to make sure that if you have a small number of articles, you can go there very fast. But if you are a premium, member, you can go to specific queues as well. So it's a good point because you will be able to treat things in parallel and also adjust the throughput based on the risk associated. So it's like putting governance on steroids with targeted or customizable decision-making process. This is quite key. So when it comes to basically OpenGov or Moonriver, we decided to go with 5 tracks in order to keep it small. So there is a root track that will be used for highly sensitive change proposals like runtime upgrades. There will be also the whitelist track, exactly what is used on Kusama for the moment. It will be mostly used for emergency technical upgrades. There is also the general admin that will be targeted for general purpose democratic proposals like XCM, channel opening, orbiter, program change, staking, parameter adjustments. And there is also 2 other tracks which are used to cancel or kill proposals. So there will be the referendum canceller to cancel a wrong proposal where the decision deposit, the amount that you have to put in order to propose something would be refunded in case of cancellation. And there is also the referendum killer, where basically you can also cancel a malicious proposal and this decision deposit will be slashed. So as tracks come with their own configuration, like the minimum deposit amount, the thresholds for it to pass, yeah, definitely I will encourage you again to go to this community forum to understand all the different parameters that we put in place, because there is several of them that you have to understand in order to be able to vote on Moonriver, but also to propose some proposal changes. But as Moonriver and Moonbeam are still new compared to Kusama and Polkadot, we decided to do some differences from the implementation that is done on the relay chain. We will keep the technical committee, so there will be no fellowship or technical fellowship set up at the beginning, because definitely we want to make sure that a set of experts that know the network, are technically competent, will be able to take the right decision. But what is very important is this technical committee, this collective, will only be able to whitelist proposals. They will not be able to enforce something to be happening. It will be still in the end of the community. There is also a thing that we will not implement at the beginning, which is a treasury process. This treasury process will stay under Gov v1 for the moment, because this is something that we want to roll out iteratively. So it will be kind of restrictive at the beginning, and then it will slowly become more open for people to be able to participate into this new OpenGov process.
Yann, I'm always fascinated by the examples you provide when you explain super complicated stuff. Thank you for that. Like governance on steroids, it should definitely be our hashtag for our next community campaign. So my another question would be, from what you explained now, there are some differences. What is on Kusama is not 100% on Moonriver. Can you explain, like, how did you decide how to implement it and what would be most suitable for us for Moonriver?
Yeah, definitely. So the relay chain is a different, we call it a different animal, a different beast, because their vision and their responsibilities are totally different from a parachain. So definitely we had to make some decisions there to not go with a huge list of tracks, because OpenGov provides also granularity. So when you send a proposal, you can also send it with the right category, the right track. It can be more granular, and then you will be able to make it pass more easily or less easily. And this is a thing that we did not want to experiment at the beginning, because we feel that if we put too many tracks at the same time at the beginning, it would be too confusing for the people to understand where they will be landing when they will be proposing a change. So the goal was really to keep it very narrowed in terms of scope. But there is also another question that was quite interesting when we were thinking about implementing OpenGov on Moonriver. It was to decide at which point in time we will say that, okay, we have enough support, we have enough approval to make it pass. So what we decided to do is to keep with this 2-week decision period, where basically each proposal will stay within 2 weeks. But if basically you are able to reach this threshold earlier, then it will be able to be passed. Exactly what is done on the relay chain. So we keep this logic there. But this is one major change, because before it was a set defined period of time where basically a vote will stay there for at least, you have this guarantee that a vote will stay for 2 weeks. Now this big primitive has been changed, where basically if there is enough support and approval, it can be shipped way faster than it was initially done on GovV1. So this is one of the main changes that will happen also.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, again, super theoretical, super abstract, because we are not the people who actually tested out it yet. So can you please explain how can Moonriver token holders can actually participate in governance with OpenGov?
Yes, that's a good question. So today the process is quite simple. So you can see it in 3 different steps. The first one is to go to the community forum. So you go there, you try to understand what has been discussed in the past already, and it's a good place also to learn, to engage with the community. So I would say this is the first step, to learn, to discuss, to engage, and then to propose something in this community forum. Potentially you see some parameters that are not correct, or you want to tune it in another way. So this is why you will be also proposing something up for discussion. And after you do that, there is another tool that we put in place that is called Snapshot. This is a way to do some signal voting, to have a sentiment on what people will be feeling about your proposal. So you can do this kind of process to add to our Snapshot workspace, and you will be able to submit a vote that is totally free. You don't have to pay anything. People will not have to pay any transaction fee to vote on it, and you will be able to get a sentiment from the community on your proposal. I would say this is the second step to get engagement. And the last one is to go on chain. And then on chain, you will be able to submit a real proposal, and this one will be on chain, so people will pay in order to vote on it, a very small amount, but you will have to also put a deposit in order to make sure that if it is a malicious proposal, it will get slashed, but also to avoid the spam attacks. So this is something that is mandatory, and depending on basically the criticality of your proposal, this deposit will be high or low. Other things that you can use as tools in order to play on the governance. One of them is alerts tools, alerting tools. One of them is called Web3 Alert. Sorry, Web3 Alert is a tool that you can configure that is quite interesting. That is working already on Kusama and Polkadot. That you can configure in order to receive some notification when there is some governance proposal ongoing. There is also a tool that we are using today that is called Polkadot that will be supporting also OpenGov on Moonriver when it will be landed. This is a tool that you can use, provide you with a kind of nice user experience in order to stay alert, but also be able to vote simply. And the last one is also to go to Polkadot.js. If you're a bit more technical, you can go there in order to vote on the different government proposal, but also propose something there.
Well, to our listeners, everything that Yann mentioned right now in his answer will be below the video on YouTube with the links once this event is over. Yann, thank you so much for the elaborate answers. I always learn so much from talking to you. Let's go to our third speaker, Thiago. I'm super excited to introduce Thiago to our community. Well, you already know him. He is head of ambassador. He is one of the most popular ambassadors, I would say. Hi, Thiago. And let's start with the first question. How to get started in governance? What's your best advice for the community member that are new to Polkadot, to Moonbeam, and to Moonriver in general?
So hello, Lina. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, as a head of ambassador, been working with Moonbeam for I don't know 1.5 years, and time flies. There's a lot of things that I learned throughout the process, right? And one thing that has always been key is the governance part. When you think of every project in crypto, The probably the thing that rules the most is how the governance works in that specific project. If we don't have a set of governance, if we don't know how this project behaves, we are doomed, right? It's a very red flag in most of sense. Um, so I would say that the first thing, that a new incoming person from that is wanting to learn about Polkadot and Moonbeam, we have enough documentation, to help out with those things. I think we have the forum, book assembly, Web3 alert. Like you can learn about the proposals, what we've been proposed so far, how the process kind of works. There's a Moonbeam docs, with a lot of good information and probably in all the languages as possible. Like we have our community with ambassadors, like we do such a great job with all the translations in all languages. So we have that in place. I even have a link in here that I will share with you, and I'll post it on the chat, which is, basically your article talking about the OpenGov, like this we just said. Oh, and Moonbeam Community Voice. We are here, doing this, this session today exactly to explain those things. So if you spend, a few hours, you're gonna be able to learn a lot about how governance works. And in my humble opinion, Moonbeam and Polkadot are doing one of the best governance approaches and like initiatives to in the crypto space. So if you are learning through Polkadot and Moonbeam, you're probably learning with the best when it comes to governance. And of course, last but not least, we have Telegram and Discord, and probably basically in every language as well in your region. So you're going to be able to discuss with our ambassadors, and ask questions. It's basically a way to have, like a instant feedback on your questions and your doubts and how things work. And I'm sure our ambassadors and communities do a very good job in that. So that's my advice, Lina. It's basically do a very good study, and maybe a continual work. Like crypto changes every day, as we know. It's like a interstellar movie. 1 year in crypto is like 30 years in Earth. So like we have to make sure we keep up to date, with everything that happens.
Yeah, yeah. As you can see, Thiago is very well informed and he's super resourceful. So don't hesitate to go to Discord, find him in the list of head of ambassadors, and just tag him and answer and ask your questions. Um, sorry, Thiago, for doing that.
No
My
worries.
another question is so okay, so to be able to participate in governance, I have to be a token holder. But what are the other ways for me to participate? And if you can just give me some guidance on that.
So being very practical, I would say that whoever is starting, with governance and want to learn about the process, probably your first steps won't be, like doing a very heated voting or anything like that. Is actually learn about the process, right? And I think the best way is through engagement, right? And engagement is it's pretty simple, honestly. We have our social media, we have our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord, and we have specific channels that can discuss about the proposals being made. We can even bring an open discussion. Forum has a lot of open discussions over there too. One thing that I would highlight, if you want to engage, is take a look on some proposal that it's open right now and you think it's relevant. And if it's about a grant, a project specifically, go and ask the project. Go to their Telegram and ask. Like, oh, okay, you were asking for this proposal. What does that actually mean? Like, what are you gonna do with it? Like, most of the times we have those answers in a forum, in a book assembly. There's an open discussion there. But I'll be honest, like most of your answers will be very well explained to you if you even go directly to those projects. If you keep in mind, like we have, you know, the crypto space has a few thousands of projects in there. Reality, like the projects are active. It's not a big amount. So when we talk about one of those two projects that is applying to, we are very, very early stages. They have admins, they have people in there. So try to not only go to forum book assembly, but also take a look on the stakeholders of this specific proposal. Most of the times they are not only like Moonbeam and Polkadot, could be some other projects involved. And I think you will learn a lot about how this is actually happening. Most of the times is even the the founders or the directors of the project, however they call themselves, that will be able to answer you, and you will have like a perspective from founders, from people that are really really engaged into this crypto space.
Great, thank you. And as you remember, in the beginning, I said I'll have one question, which I want all of you to answer. And the question is, why should the community care about governance? And I want to start with Thiago, since we are talking with you right now. And I want to twist it a little bit for you, Thiago, saying why you care about governance and why should any ambassador in our community and future ambassadors as well should care about it. And I know that you're one of the most successful ambassadors, and if you can tell a little bit about your history in our community, that would be great.
Sure. So I started as an ambassador. I submitted my video. Had Kathy interviewing me, and we have like initial conversations, and I was very very excited. This was even before Moonbeam was Moonbeam. I mean, this was before the crowd loan and all those stuff. And it was very early stages, a lot of learning. And since I was there since the beginning, I was able to see like all the stages that we passed through, in order to get where we are right now. Um, so I started as an ambassador, and I started doing a lot of the Portuguese community work. We also did a lot of I hosted several interviews with several stakeholders here too in the Moonbeam space. And as time flies, as time goes by, a lot of work we've been done together and collectively. And I passed from ambassador to senior ambassador to head of ambassador, and I guess afterwards, I was even with there was a proposal to be made to the grant, where I became the one of the grant committees from a non-foundational member. So I think all of those things helped me to not only understand how Moonbeam works from inside out, but also, like the path it takes, to be more and more engaged, with Moonbeam, with the values that we have, Um, and I think with the last one, with the being a member of the grant committee, really helped me to understand how we should be making decisions, and think of the proposals, the projects that it comes to us, and they ask for a grant, a lot. This is aligned with our objectives, with our vision. Like having those things in mind, it's something that we discuss about governance, but we have to keep in mind that there's the value, of the mission and vision of Moonbeam, of crypto, where we want to go, and all constant having those questions answered, and asking those questions. I think this helped me evolve a lot, in this governance perspective. Um, so this is my path, and when you ask about like what the importance of governance, to be honest, crypto is a very disrupted endeavor, in my opinion. But a lot of things, a lot of people just put as a disruptive technology, right? Crypto is a disruptive technology. It's about crypto, blockchain, and all this stuff. And I don't agree with it. I mean, of course, it's a disruptive technology when it comes to put everything together, but is a disruptive concept, right? It's about how we are making decisions in the future. Should we be making decisions as though we're doing now? Like there are centralized entities making decisions this way and that way. A lot of people are making decisions for you, and we think we have a lot of liberty and freedom to do some of the decisions, but we do not. And I think that's where this whole governance thing comes in, because where we're living right now, this OpenGov, all these discussions that we're having is about how we want to make decisions in the future. And once we establish that, we're going to have a more sustainable world, in a way that we're going to make decisions that's going to be better and more beneficial to the whole. And I think that's what crypto is about. It's about disrupting the decision making process.
Wow, that was a very unexpectedly philosophical answer, Tiago. Thank you so much for that. So I'll repeat my question and I want Yann to answer it now. So if you remember, the question is, why should the community care about governance? Yann?
Yes, thank you, Lina. And I liked also this answer. So yes, if you see basically a decentralized network like Moonbeam, Polkadot, Kusama as a country, each of its community members, community holders are like citizens. And citizens have this kind of responsibility to vote on different laws, rules, to keep it working properly, but also to keep it being the best place to live in. So that's why basically governance is critical. You govern over a network that you care about, you make sure that the right decisions are being taken, and also you prevent any issue on the security side. It's a very powerful tool and it can do wonders. But each voters, each token holders have the responsibility of their votes. The fact that we can do some forkless upgrades is key, and this is something that is provided by Substrate, which let us be adaptive to any condition. We know that the blockchain is constantly evolving beast, so we have to adapt, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but being able to have this forkless upgrade is key. But the thing is, this is also something that needs to be used carefully. And that's why I really strongly advise everyone that is voting on some governance proposal to do their proper due diligence, to make sure that they understand the pros and cons of each proposals, and to learn, educate themselves, still be able to vote on proposal and keep innovating in this space.
Oh, okay, great. This is yet another great analogy from Yann. I don't know if you lost him or not, but yes, this is amazing how he compares the token holders to the citizens and the network to the country, and how citizens have ability to vote and have power. That's amazing. And let's say what Raul can say now to the same question. So why should people care about governance, Raul?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I agree with both of you. I'm not so good at analogies, but what I will say is that different to the Web 2 model on how we're used to use the technology that we've had for the last 20 or 30 years, there's no customer service, particularly on the centralized organizations, right? This is a collective project. And being a collective project requires the engagement of community members to make decisions. And if you want to solve an issue, if you want to propose a change, if you want to see something on chain in order to bring value to the network, you need to participate. You need to submit the proposal. You need to vote on the proposal. Participation is key and is an intrinsic element of what the Web3 vision is about. So it's important, being a collective project, that the collective as a whole engages and associates in this particular type of participation. And that's why I think governance is essential to the adaptability and the evolution of Web3 stack in general, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. All of them were like great analogies and answers and comparisons. Thank you so much for your answers. I'm actually done with all the questions I've prepared for you today. And I really quickly checked the chat and I don't see any questions from the community, but we are well prepared and we have some questions we had for this. And the first question is actually to Raul again. Can you please tell us, when will OpenGov be integrated with Polkadot, and what does it depend on when it's going to be on Polkadot?
Well, it depends on the vote of the community. A governance upgrade, an upgrade to the governance model needs a runtime upgrade, and that depends on the community accepting or rejecting it. I think that if we see or we define Kusama as an experimental network in which we test or we experiment with the models and changes before going on Polkadot, I would say that if we give a couple more weeks or months, then Kusama will be definitely comfortable up and running on OpenGov. And I don't have a particular date, but I would expect for governance 2 or open governance to be on the first quarter of on the first half of 2023 on Polkadot, I think.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, so yes, still no questions. So again, I'm gonna use my privilege of being a host and ask another question. Can you, Raul, give us a little more insight again into the challenges with the integration of OpenGov and Kusama? How did it go, and what were the actual main challenges there?
Yeah, so I mean, the actual challenges were when you discuss a model with the community, when the community engages on particular models, there's one thing to give the idea of how it should work and what the community wants to participate in, and another thing is to actually implement it and to have the implementation in place with the particular parameters, units of the price of the decision deposit, the price of the submission deposit, which goal will go in which track, and so on and so on. So when it comes to integration on Kusama, the main challenges had to do with those particular things. It had to do with, okay, maybe this submission deposit is too high. Maybe we need to change it and lower it for the community to participate more. Maybe this call is not well suited in this particular track. It should go to another track, or we should create a new track in order to get this call submitted and approved by the community. All of these particular, there are small changes, but all in all, if they're all wrong, give a lot of headaches to the community because it's impossible to use open governance model, are the challenges that we encounter on Kusama itself. So what I would say to the Moonbeam people or the Moonbeam community working on open governance model is to pay a lot of attention to the decision deposit amounts, the submission deposit amounts, and the approval and support thresholds, which I'm sure you're prepared already for it because the proposal is already up for vote. But to pay extra attention to these particular things and where the community is having difficulties using the specific tracks and adjust this in subsequent runtime upgrades for it. Those are the challenges that we encounter. It was not a challenge of like, okay, this track is not being used, or the fellowship is not working because the code doesn't work. It was challenges that were particularly related to the access of the model in OpenGov, right? So the changes of configurations are very important and needs to be taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think Daniel has a question. I guess he is fed up with my questions, so let's read his. He's asking, what happens if you make a proposal, but the technical fellowship thinks it should be on a different track? Can that be adjusted in flight, or do we have to start over with a new proposal? Yann or Raul, any? Yeah. Who wants to take
You want to go ahead? I think it's the same for Moonriver and Kusama, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't have a technical fellowship, but yeah, we can basically emulate this answer. So yes, so far, if it's falling under the wrong track, the proposal needs to be redone. So no, it cannot be changed or adjusted in flight.
Yeah, it actually happened last week on Kusama. We were discussing the next schedule for auctions for Parachains on 2023. So we presented a schedule for auctions throughout the year from January 2023 to January 2024. And we submitted the proposal to schedule these auctions to be voted by the community, and if approved, schedule the auctions for the year on whitelisted color track, which needs the whitelist of the fellowship. And then we notify the fellowship members that, okay, this is up for vote and there is a proposal for the fellowship for vote. And the fellowship members decided that the schedule is very opinionated proposal for the fellowship to decide for yes or for no, even if the community approves. So they were feeling more comfortable if we would submit this on root track instead. Mm-hmm. And so we resubmitted the proposal on root track. And so eventually the proposal day, the period of voting, the 14 days will finish and the proposal is rejected, right? The first proposal. And then the second one is up for vote and it's the valid one, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, great answer, great example. Thank you, Raul. Daniel, thank you for the question. You were the one who actually did it. Thank you, Daniel. And we are actually out of time, almost out of time. So I want to stop asking questions and just want to ask you to, if you have any final thoughts or any messages to our community, please go ahead.
My final message is, if you have Kusama tokens, go vote. Go to Polkadot JS apps, go to the governance forums, go to Subsquare and Polk Assembly, and check on the proposals. As Thiago said, proposals, if you go to the forums, proposals can be very pedagogic. You can learn a lot from proposals on discussion and up for vote. So go there, review them, ask the questions that you need to ask, and make sure that you vote.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts is, be engaged, be, like just focus on the community, make sure, you were paying attention to all the changes. Time flies, and in the crypto space, everything changes very fast. So just make sure, you dedicate a few minutes a day, at least if you don't have, just to, keep up to date to see what, things that you have to, to focus on the weekend or whatever. But don't let accumulate, because after, if you stay like a month away, that's going to be a big gap that you have to fill out afterwards. So just always keep a little bit in touch. Um, I think I don't know if it was Yann or Raul mentioned about the um, the Web3 the Web3 alerts. I strongly suggest, to have the Web3 alerts and make sure you are always up to date.
Yeah, and my final thought is really, as it was mentioned before, keep learning, keep engaging with the community, with the moderators, because there is a lot of stuff to learn. It's very exciting, and at the end, you can vote and make a wise choice. So yeah, this is the community is put at the heart of each decentralized network. So yeah, feel free to act as a community because this is amazing to be part of this.
Great. Thank you so much. Raul, thank you so much for joining us. It was very interesting to hear quite interesting, surprising insights from Kusama. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes. Yann, always pleasure to talk to you, not only here like in public, but in the chats as well. Always very insightful. And Thiago, thank you for sharing your experience and your advice with our community. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people, the listeners, found it very helpful. And I want to thank the community who joined us today. Thank you guys so much for being with us. And if you have any complaints about me hosting this event, go and complain to Kathy. She's the one to blame. Thank you so much, guys, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.